Hello, and welcome to the Coachman. So, for today's reading, we're going to be going all the way over to the UK. Now, for many of you who might not know about the UK, if I said England, that would be somewhat correct. So, the UK is kind of consists of like Ireland, Scotland, Wales, Britain, and all that. Britain is actually like what we consider, all of England, right? So England and the UK they're different, but the same. So it's weird, but we're going to be heading over, and this is where it gets funny, that we're heading over to the UK, and we're actually going to Colton, to, if I'm got it right, to Cornwall. So Cornwall, and we're going to be reading a story from Cornish, which is an old dialect that died out and it was extinct in Cornwall way back in like the 1800s or something like that. So sit back, relax, and we're going to be reading The Greedy Old Man from Francis Jenkins Olcott. Long ago in Cornwall, on a hillcock called the Gump, there was a fairy ring. Many a good old man or woman on moonlit nights had seen the fairies dancing there in their revels, and had been rewarded with gifts, small but rich. Now, there was one greedy old man, who, having heard his neighbors tell of the fairy gold at the revels, decided to steal some of the treasure. Now, we all know this ain't going to end well for this fool, but let's go see. So on a moonlit night, when all was quiet, he stole softly up to the Gump. As he drew near, he heard delightful music, which seemed to come from inside the hillock. The notes were now slow and solemn, and now quick and gay, so that the old man had to weep and laugh in one breath. Then before he knew it, he began to dance to the fairy measure. He was forced by some unseen power to whirl round and round, but in spite of this, he kept his wits about him and watched to see what would happen. Suddenly, there was a crashing sound, and the door in the hillock opened. Instantly, the old man saw that everything about him was ablaze with colored lights. Each blade of grass was hung with tiny bright lamps, and every tree and bush was illuminated with stars. It sounds like this dude is high as a kite. Out of the opening in the hillock marched a band of goblins, as if to clear the way. Then came a number of fairies musicians playing on every kind of musical instrument. These were followed by troop after troop of elfin soldiers carrying waving banners. The soldiers arranged themselves in two files on either side of the door, but the goblins, much to the old man's disgust, placed themselves close behind him. As they were no bigger than his thumb, he thought to himself, if they bother me, I can easily step on them and crush them with my foot. This old man has no idea that he might have just been roofied, and he's dealing with a bunch of straight stone cold miniature killers. But we'll see. Because honestly, it sounds like he's got it all under control. This vast array having disposed itself, next from the hillock came a crowd of elfin servants, carrying pitchers of silver and gold, and goblets cut out of diamonds, rubies, emeralds, and other precious stones. Servants followed, bearing aloft gold and silver platters, heaped high with the richest meats, pastries, candies, and glowing fruits. I ain't gonna lie, this sounds like paradise, bruh. A number of elfin boys, clad in crimson, then set out small tables made of ivory curiously carved, and the servants arranged the feast with order. Then out of the hillock came crowding thousands and thousands of lovely winged fairies, clad in gossamer robes of every color like the rainbow. The music suddenly changed to low, delicate notes, and the old man found that he was no longer forced to dance and whirl about. And as he stood still, the perfume of 1,000 rich flowers filled the air, and the whole vast host of fairies began to sing a song as clear and sweet as the tinkle of silver bells. Then from the hillock issued forth line after line of elven boys dressed in green and gold, and behind them on an ivory throne, borne aloft by 100 fairies, came the king and the queen of fairyland blazing with beauty and jewels. The throne was placed upon the hillock, which immediately bloomed with lilies and roses. Before the king and queen was set the most beautiful of all the little tables, laden with gold and silver dishes and precious goblets. The fairies took their places at the other tables and began the feast with a will. Now, thought the old man, my time has come. If only I can creep up without being seen to the fairy king's table, I shall be able to snatch enough gold to make me rich for life. Old man about to end his life. And with his greedy mindset on this, he crouched down and began to very slowly creep toward the throne. But he did not see that thousands of goblins had cast fine threads about his body and were holding the ends in their hands. Trembling with greed, the old man crept closer and closer to the fairy king and queen. He took his hat from his head and raised it carefully to cover the royal throne and table. And as he did so, he heard a shrill whistle. Instantly, his hand was fixed powerless in the air. Then, with a sudden crash, all became dark around him. Whirl, whirl, whirl. And he heard as if a flight of bees were brushing over his ears. And suddenly, his body from head to foot was stabbed with pins and pinched with tweezers. Then he was thrown violently upon his back and his arms outstretched, and his arms and legs were fastened to the ground with magic chains. His tongue seemed tied with cords so that he could not call out. And as he lay there trembling with fright and pain, he felt as though swarms of insects were running over him. Then he saw standing on his nose a grinning goblin. This little monster stamped and jumped with great delight, and making a fearful grimace, shouted, "Away, away, I smell the day." That must be raw, Holmes. No joke, think about it. It's almost like you're about to walk into a bank, right? Like you walk into a bank with a mask and you're about to you're robbing it. Yeah? You get all the money and you walk out and it's almost like a bunch of babies like trip you up with a rope, stand on you, and like the bag is like laying right at the front door. That must be some cruel stuff right there, boy. And on this, an army of goblins, fairies, and elves were running up and down the old man's body, stabbing him with pins and pinching him with tweezers, jumped quickly down and rushed into the hillock, which closed immediately, and the old man saw the fairies no more. At length the sun rose, and he found that he was tied to the ground with a myriad of gossamer webs, which were covered with dewdrops that glistened like diamonds in the sunlight. He shook himself free and got up. Wet, cold, ashamed, and pinched black and blue, he returned to his home. And you may be sure that he never again tried to steal the fairy gold. I hope you enjoyed yourself today, and until next time, take care.